Gentlemen, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Let's start with the negative. We spent all of last episode of Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal talking about one marquee matchup, setting it up, building it up, hyping it up. And then we got 4 minutes of football and lightning arrived and it was postponed to November 6th. That would be DeLand and Spruce Creek, the number 3 team in the state and number 4 team in the state in the first power rankings put out by the FHSAA last week. So that's the bad news. We're not going to get that until November 6th. Although I guess another part of the good news is we can just save that show and just re-upload it again come November 6th. Here's the real good news this week. We got another Titanic struggle. We got another Titan showdown. Mainland is going to play at DeLand in a matchup of 2 of our top 3 teams in our power rankings. It's going to be another fun one, boys.
I sure hope so. I mean, well, the weather hopefully will play out better than it did over at Port Orange. And it was a shame because that was like the only game really that got affected by the lightning in the area.
Well, don't say that. I covered a Seabreeze New Smyrna Beach State game that started at about 9:30, about 2.5 hours.
It finished, though. So it finished.
It did finish. It did finish. So this is Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. I'm Chris Vanell. We've got Chris Boyle with us. We've got Zach Allen with us. Let's talk about that big game that I just mentioned. Mainland at DeLand. Chris, I'll start with you in kind of the Mainland side of things, the visiting perspective. What are you looking for out of the Buccaneers in this one?
Yeah, I mean, a faster start, I think. Certainly something they're going to be looking for. They kept Matanzas. Matanzas hung around in that game, right? I mean, they were winning at halftime, the Pirates. They're up 17-14. Mainland had a couple of turnovers in that game. They put them behind the 8 ball. They got it going after halftime. Again, the balance of that offense has really been impressive this year. They threw for 279. They ran for 152. 7 players caught a pass offensively. And then you look at the tackle for loss numbers. They had 7 tackles for loss. Sean Holmes had a couple of them. Tamaj Woodard got in on 1.5. Had a couple. Got involved in a couple of sacks as well. So I think for them, getting out fast, because as we saw last week with DeLand, they're not going to waste time. They scored 14 points in those 4 minutes before the Lightning got there. So if Mainland is not going to be sharp right out of the gate, DeLand can boat race anybody, and that includes the Buccaneers.
Zach, what are you looking for from a Bulldog perspective?
Yeah, just start the same as last week. I mean, I know it was a small sample size, and there's always the possibility Spruce Creek battles back at that one, but they had a 14, and they will have a 14-0 cushion less than 4 minutes into the game, thanks to Marcellus Carey, who had a 5-yard rushing touchdown and then a pick 6 like less than 2 minutes later. And I'm looking more from him because I know we talked a lot about Tage Moore before the season, and he's a sophomore running back. He's really great, but Marcellus Carey has been just as good, if not, the number 1 guy on their team this season. He isn't really heavily recruited by anybody, but he goes out here and is a major player in this DeLand offense. But I think if they get off to a similar start like they did against Spruce Creek, that can get out of hand early, just because, I mean, at times Mainland has, self-admittedly slept out of the gate, and then they're good enough to battle back against Matanzas or all the other teams on their difficult schedule. They kept up with Spruce Creek, but they just can't let DeLand get off to a quick start like Spruce Creek did.
That's the thing, though, right? Like, Mainland is battle tested. They know what they're getting themselves into. And for a game like this, like, you figure they're going to have some juice coming out of the locker room. And for DeLand, you mentioned Marcellus Carey and kind of his recruitment. You're right. It almost mirrors Javon Ross from a couple of years ago. Like, somebody's going to get a steal with Marcellus Carey. And then we saw Javon Ross go to Bethune-Cookman and play a major role in their win just this past weekend. He scored his first 2 collegiate touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, kind of doing a little bit of everything for that offense. So let's go to a rivalry game here. Daytona at Pine Ridge, the Battle of the Boulevard. Chris, I'll turn to you here first. Give me what you know on Daytona.
Well, they're coming in this game on a bit of a cold streak. They've lost 3 in a row. We mentioned that they got out, quickly, and I thought this was going to be an improved team. They beat Crescent City. They beat Vieira to start the season. They have not won since the end of August. They haven't
Tough
scored.
Comp, though. Tough comp, right?
Yeah, they've had a tough run here. I mean, DeLand and Rockledge back to back is no picnic. They didn't score in either of those games though. They've given up 81 consecutive points dating back to September the 5th, and they scored against Matanzas. But I think this is an opportunity for them to kind of reassert dominance. If I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and look at this. I don't believe Daytona's lost to Pine Ridge since 2012. Pine Ridge has gotten close several times, lost by a blocked extra point one year. They were in it last year. I mean, Pine Ridge is kind of nipping at their heels, but for Daytona, this is an opportunity for them to right the ship and to keep down their rival from across the street.
Well, and you get a Pine Ridge team, a hosting Pine Ridge team here that is going to be, they got a little momentum. They get their second win of the year last week over Lake Weir. Zach, I'll turn to you for the Pine Ridge side of things. What do you got?
Yeah, they're 2-1 in their last 3 weeks, and the only loss is to Mount Dora Christian, who's 6-1 and blowing everyone out of the water. And really comparatively to the rest of Mount Dora Christian's results, Pine Ridge only lost 42-21. I'll use only for that one. But yeah, Pine Ridge has something going here, and DeAndre Weston is their guy. I know the first win he was injured, but they beat Lake Weir 12-6. He's kind of their do-it-all guy. He had 70 passing yards and a touchdown, was 3 yards off a 100-yard game rushing and another touchdown. He's also playing safety, so he does everything for them. And I think if you're Daytona, you got to stop him. And I think an underrated piece there is Cole Darling at receiver. Even when Riley Harris was QB, he had a touchdown reception. He was their best receiver. And I remember Alex Russell talking about him before the season even started. And he's kind of shown up. He's a tall, lanky receiver, big target still. And yeah, I think that combo with his height and ability to go and get the ball with DeAndre Weston's athletic ability has given a couple teams some trouble the past few weeks.
Let's go to our third all-local game this week, our third and final. Atlantic at Seabreeze. This is kind of an interesting one because it was a relatively tight game last year, and Seabreeze was able to kind of pull away and prevail 29-15. They played that on a Thursday night. I remember I was at that one. Atlantic comes into this one still looking for their first win of the year. They're 0-6, and they're coming off a bye. So they've had 2 weeks to kind of, recuperate and game plan for what Seabreeze is going to throw at them. Seabreeze, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. Like, the defense is going to be legit, and their offense showed some promising signs last week against New Smyrna Beach. That was a wild game. New Smyrna Beach ended up winning that one 28-27 in double overtime, but Seabreeze really controlled that game. They were winning really 14-7 for the majority of it, and New Smyrna Beach was able to tie it up in the final 3 minutes and send it to overtime. And then New Smyrna Beach blocked an extra point in the second overtime to end things there. But a really scrappy game from Seabreeze. They're going to be a tough out for anybody, and they continue.
I think scrappy kind of personifies that team. I mean, we saw it back in the opening week of the season. They can muck it up, and they can score, and they almost certainly will score either by defense or special teams on a weekly basis at this point. So that's no longer a trend. That's just what they do. That's who they are.
That's an identity. Correct. Yeah, and they scored another special teams touchdown last week when they blocked a punt in the end zone and dove on it. So, so I'm looking forward to that one. It should be a good battle. Mount Dora at Matanzas. Zach, I'll turn to you on this one. What do you know about Matanzas heading into this one?
Yeah, it's like Matt Forrest told me, their head coach, a couple weeks ago. It's either feast or famine, and that had been on a game by game basis until last week, and then it was kind of a half by half basis where the Kansas comes out firing in the first half, and then they get shut out in the second half, 20-0, give up 27 unanswered points, and lose that game. But when they're on, and they don't look like they can be stopped by many teams in the area. Maybe with the exceptions of the top two, but we're talking about the Kansas led 17-7 against Mainland, our number 3 team in the power rankings, and I mean
top
it is
50 team in the state according to the FHSA rankings.
Yeah, so it's not like they were just got lucky. They were handling them until they didn't, and then it got out of hand. But just looking for more consistency there for Matanzas. I mean, the fact they're in those games at this point is definitely a sign of improvement. They just need to figure out how to finish the job.
We knew Matanzas was going to be kind of the likely runner-up in that district. This is what it's all about for them, though. If they want to get to the playoffs, these last 4 games are critical to them. They got Mount Dora, Bellevue, then a bye week, and then they've got one of their big rivals. They're going to go on the road to Menendez, and then they go down 95 on the road to Palm Bay. So those 4 games are going to determine whether Matanzas is playing in the playoffs or not. We kind of figured the start of the year, Mainland was the favorite going into the district. They gave them everything they had for a half, and a little bit more. But this is what it's really shaped up for Matanzas. They got to find a way to potentially win all 4 of these games down the stretch.
Yeah, keep building that wild card case, and I think at this point they do have a pretty strong case. It's just continuing to stack those wins. Chris, let's stay in Flagler County. Fletcher at Flagler Palm Coast. What do you know about the Bulldogs coming into this one?
Well, they got right. They needed a bye week in a big way, and they capitalized coming out of it. They beat University pretty soundly, 38-7. They were able to get their quarterback situations solved, and Ladarius Simmons was not only healthy, but he was very efficient in that game. He was 10 of 14 for 135 yards through the air. Ran 9 times for 68 yards and a touchdown. They scored defensively. They ran for another touchdown. It was kind of what we thought FPC could be when you reflect back to week 1. I thought we had pretty high hopes of this team, even though it was a lot of new pieces and a lot of players they had to replace. That they still had some guys that had done it before and had some varsity experience. So I think they can definitely build on that. Fletcher's tough though. I think this is a pretty good football team up in the Jacksonville area. I've seen them before. They have a player that's committed to UCF and defensive back Elijah Keys, who had 3 interceptions in their first 3 games. So I think this is going to be a good test for Flagler. If they can pull off what I think would be a little bit of an upset here. Fletcher's ranked 108th in the state, according to Max Preps. That'd be a pretty big statement. There are only 2 losses this year, Nice and Oakleaf, and they started the year 3-0. So, big test, I think, for them, and we'll see just, how much they're able to build on what they did last week.
Our UCF beat writers sneaking in a UCF recruiting note. I love it. Last one.
Talk about what you know, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Halifax at Baker County. Zach, I'll turn to you on this one because you saw Halifax last week. Pretty dominant showing, right?
I think we deserve them a little bit of an apology. I mean, I know they'd only scored 6 points in their first 5 games, but they were playing some quality teams. None of them had losing records. They put one of them with Seabreeze, who is a top team in the area. A few of them had only lost no games or 1 game. And then they go to Taylor, score 44 points and blow them out. It was 32-6 at halftime. So there was potential for that to be, a much larger win. But I'm excited to see what they're going to do going forward. They have a new head coach, Vince Wilson, who is a part of the 2003 Mainland State Championship winning team. He took over for the former head coach Lawrence Garner after Seabreeze. He told me after the game. And he already has that offense humming. I mean, Marcus Brown Jr., their running back, seems like, well, Vince told me was kind of their X factor on offense. And he showed it against Taylor. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. 3 of them were from 25 or more yards. So it's not like they were just goal line carries. He was, there was like, from my perspective, covering that game, every time he touched the ball, there was a potential for him to go all the way. And he's a guy that hadn't had many carries this season coming into the game. He had 26 carries before that game. And, he was well in the double digits against Taylor. And then I'm not sure exactly how many yards he ended up with, but it was well over 100 on top of his 4 touchdowns. So
what did Vince say after that when he said something along the lines of, we probably should have gotten him the ball a little more early on or earlier in the season?
Yeah,
it
was something along those lines. And I think he's not going to be waiting for carries for much longer going forward.
Kind of a weird quirk in that game, by the way, with Halifax and Taylor. 2 former North Carolina running backs going head-to-head as head coaches, because Antoine Williams and Vince Wilson both played for the Tar Heels.
Yes, that's fun. I like that.
There was no, I'm sure there's love between coaches, but their squads had no love for each other. Let me tell you that. 3 players got ejected in that game, especially in the second half. It was just personal foul after personal foul, and then, the Taylor crowd starts chiming in every time there's a penalty. So it was an eventful game, to say the least.
Friday night lights get chippy sometimes, baby. 2 other games to make quick note. We got 2 other games here. Tavares at New Smyrna Beach. Like we mentioned earlier, New Smyrna Beach is coming off that thrilling double overtime win against Seabreeze. And then University off that 38-7 loss to Flagler Palm Coast travels to Jesuit. That's a team that they beat last year, but kind of a tale of 2 seasons so far for University. On bye this week are Spruce Creek, Taylor, and Father Lopez. So that'll do it for us this week. Chris Boyle, Zach Allen, I'm Chris Vanell. This has been Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you down on the road.